The Dolly Sods disaster. We'd all gotten off work and lectures early that day, so Colin, Steve, Frank, Chad, and I all agreed to embark on a 2-night backpacking trip in the Dolly Sods wilderness area of eastern West Virginia. The weather was perfect and the fall leaves were beginning to really pop. We figured that they'd be even better once we arrived. The plan to be that Steve, Frank, Colin, and I drive up in one car. Chad, on the other hand, had football practice and would drive up separately later on. I got off work around noon, went home, and got the rest of my gear together. I then went to pick up Colin, Steve, and Frank. After that, we hit the road.
"Man, we gonna do some real tough shit this weekend, G!"
exclaimed Steve. Yep, we'll have good weather and hopefully it shouldn't be too crowded, Colin replied.
Eek!
Frank said. Yeah, Frank, I replied.
Can we get donuts with apple cider?
Do we have to, Frank? Sunset's kinda early this time of year. We want to make good time, I replied.
Well, I'm gonna need my energy if I want to stay up all night tonight,
He stated. An all-nighter? Oh, fuck nah. No, Frank. I'm not getting you donuts, I said firmly. This shut Frank up for a while, but I could tell he was disappointed that he wasn't going to get what he wanted. He had a sad and upset look on his face. I kind of felt bad for him, and so I reluctantly got off the highway to look for a store. I knew that your average gas station would not sell donuts and apple cider, so I kid you not, had to drive an extra 25 minutes off route to find a country farm stand that sold them. Frank squealed as we pulled into the parking lot.
Man, your buses always be slowing us down,
Said Steve.
Well, technically, it's not actually slowing us down. These donuts will actually be giving me energy for hiking in it,
Replied Frank, though I already somehow knew that this would be false. We went up to the stand and bought what we wanted. However, as we were getting ready to pay, a plump figure emerged from the cornfield behind the stand. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself.
"Didn't expect to see you boys up here today.
Said Herbert.
You tend not to find too many chaps out in the countryside.
Hold the fuck up. What are you doing here? I demanded.
I'm just in the process of gathering up the ingredients for Scarecrow Ernie's Curly Porridge. I will be hosting a dinner party tonight, and you boys are my prime guests."
Herbert explained. No, Herbert, we refuse to associate with you, and this time we mean it, Colin explained.
"Nonsense for this. Curly Porridge is in your future."
Herbert looked absolutely ridiculous. He wore a tattered flannel shirt revealing his enormous potbelly, long baggy scarecrow pants, and clown shoes. His hair was crazier than ever before. He also had corn sticking out of his ears too, as well as some mysterious slime coating his triple chin.
"Where are you off to on this fine day anyway?"
He asked. Going backpacking in the wilderness. Your dinner party is not on our itinerary, said Colin. As soon as Colin mentioned a backpacking trip, though, Herbert's face lit up with a cheesy grin. Colin then knew that he had fucked up.
Aha! No, boys. Curly Porridge is best served on the wild side of things, and your backpacking trip is the perfect opportunity to host my dinner party. Therefore, I will be tagging along with you boys immediately.
Herbert exclaimed. No, I stated. Herbert, we're laying down the line with you once and for all. All you do is get us into trouble wherever you go. It's time to put an end to it right here and now. Goodbye now and goodbye forever, I said, as the four of us went back to hop in the car with the intention of leaving Herbert in the dust. And we did just that. It was a bit of a catch. As soon as we got back onto the road, we were soon stopped by Herbert's minivan. It is parked right in the middle of the road, front and center, so that no car could squeeze by. Herbert rolled down the window to say some words.
I figured you boys would try to escape me. Luckily, Scarecrow Ernie is always a few steps ahead.
Herbert, get the fuck out of the road, I shouted.
Not unless I'm allowed to tag along with you boys. You need my porridge.
Guys, just let him come along, I told everybody. He hasn't caused any trouble yet, and this whole dinner party thing of his is probably just a facade. Herbert, hop in, I called. Herbert exited his minivan and squeezed into the middle seat of my car.
Hey!
He said. His stench was that of expired cheese and B.O. He left his minivan sitting there in the middle of the road, engine running and everything. I had to make a U-turn to take the long way back to the highway. Luckily, though, we still had plenty of time, as it was only around 3:30 in the afternoon. 2 hours later, and we had made it to West Virginia and were nearing Dolly Sods. Herbert had just happened to wake up from his cat nap at the exact same time Frank was getting ready to chow down on his donuts.
Hey, what's him?
Herbert demanded as he snatched a donut out of Frank's chubby hand.
Let me do it,
Frank replied.
Not anymore.
Herbert snickered as he didn't eat the donut, but rather dropped it down his pants. It was now a lost cause.
Don't worry, Frankie. This donut is an essential ingredient for curry porridge. But first, it must marinate for an hour or two.
Herbert explained. This seemed to cheer Frank up, which definitely raised a few red flags in my mind, but it was whatever. I could tell people like Steve were eager to get out of that car and into the woods. I don't blame them, as the Herbert stench was getting unbearable to a whole new level. Luckily, we were now driving up the mountain, and 5 minutes later, we had reached our parking site. We didn't waste any more time. We gathered our things and got walking. Our route totaled around 20 miles and have us starting on the Rocky Ridge Trail at the back end of the reserve. Spruce trees made up the majority of the landscape, with lots of boulders too. We kept having to stop and wait for people such as Frank and Herbert to catch up though.
Wait for me, guys,
cried Herbert, who walked at a snail's pace, due to how chubby he was. We decided that since it was evening now, beginning to get dark outside, that it would be a good idea to find a spot to camp. We wandered off trail a little bit and eventually came across a clearing where we could set up, with a fire ring and all. It also had a weird-looking rock, which had been carved up by the wind over millennia. Colin had his tent, and I had my hammock to sleep in.
I'm going tough man style,
said Steve. His sleeping setup involved a big boulder that he would stretch out on. He'd use some moss as a pillow, and his back arched at least a 30-degree angle when he lied down. Steve, it's supposed to rain tonight. You're going to want some coverage, Colin suggested.
Fuck the rain, G. I just be killing two birds with one stone, that's all. Sleeping and showering.
Okay. I guess we should go check up on Chad. He got a football practice hours ago, so he should be on his hike in now, said Colin. Yeah, I replied. Here, I'll call him. I used whatever cell service we had out there to give Chad a FaceTime call. He picked up almost immediately. Rather than him walking through the now darkening woods, we were greeted with the background of a Hampton Inn lobby. He sat in a lounge chair, was in a bathrobe, and was chowing down on some brownie pancakes. Here was our exact conversation.
Hey, what's up, bro?
Chad, what are you doing? You're supposed to be hiking in to meet us.
Well, you see, bro, Bible practice got off a little late start for a change. The gains can't manifest themselves after all. And so, I decided to take residence here for tonight, the Hampton Inn at Frostburg.
And now it's weird how Chad is at Frostburg, as that's like 3 hours out of the way. Okay, so you're just gonna meet us first thing tomorrow morning then?
I'm a little sketched out now, bro. I've been tracking the weather, and it seems a little rainy this weekend. I don't want to get all wet now, would we, bros?
Doesn't matter. You'll dry off, and besides, it's only supposed to rain tonight.
Well, bro, homecoming is right around the corner this time of year. According to bro science, even around 10 minutes of the rain is enough to catch a case of the sniffles. And the sniffles before homecoming would be a disaster. So, I think I'm gonna make the smart choice and sit this one out with you, bros. I'll be chilling at the Hampton Inn for the bro weekend. Feel free to join me.
Chad bailed, I told Colin.
Of course he did. That man sometimes be a bigger bitch than Buzz Man,
replied Steve. Well, I guess he's one less person we have to worry about then, said Colin. True, I replied. We had finished setting up our stuff and it was pretty much all the way dark outside by then. We got a campfire going and stood around whilst we talked. It was dead silent out there. No crickets, no wind, no nothing. It's pretty eerie to be honest. That's when we realized. Herbert, he was nowhere to be seen. Normally, we would all feel relieved that Herbert was gone, but we also knew that Herbert is never really gone. My heart skipped a beat when I spotted a mysterious pile of items on the ground near our camp. Look, I pointed out. We went over to investigate. Oh, no, this is bad, Colin said dreadfully. You're probably wondering what we found on the ground that could be causing us so much worry. On the ground, we found a pile of Herbert's clothes, the same scarecrow outfit he wore from earlier. A shiver ran up my spine at the sheer thought of the fact that Herbert was somewhere out there, naked. Just then, we felt like we were being watched. That feeling was confirmed when we began hearing footsteps circling our campsite. What should we do? Whispered Colin. I figured that trying to hide or run away would be only worsening things, so I came up with something else. Okay, just sit around the campfire and be quiet. Maybe then he'll go away. We did just that. The light from our fire was now shining brighter than ever, meaning the tree line was barely lit up in the faint glow of the firelight. The footsteps seemed like they were getting closer. The tension was high, and none of us dared move an inch, let alone say anything. Just then, we saw it. A figure standing in the tree line, halfway hiding behind a tree. I couldn't make out who they were, as the flame was too dim to provide enough light. I added a few more logs onto the fire to get some more light, and then I was able to see who it was. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. I could tell because the light from the campfire highlighted his every feature. Luckily, he was not naked, but rather he wore a tree costume, presumably to try and blend in. It did not do the trick, however, as his triple chin and crazy hair were still all too apparent. Herbert just stood there watching us. The only sounds any of us could hear were the crackling of the campfire and the sound of Herbert's heavy breathing. I thought of a plan on the fly and made an attempt to execute it. That plan would be to quietly signal for everyone in the group to make a run for it, all the way back to the car. But instead, Herbert beat me to it, almost like he could read my mind or something.
No need to flee, boys. Curly porridge is almost done brewing,
mentioned Herbert.
Just give me a few seconds while I add the finishing touches.
We then heard the sound of Herbert letting one rip. Then he turned on a flashlight and shined it directly at us. It was the big, bulky yellow kind. "Run!" Colin exclaimed. We did just that. We didn't leave without our gear, however, though we had no time to stow it away in our bags as Herbert was gaining on us. We were forced to run whilst carrying our gear by hand, along with our flashlights. Colin, for example, had to carry his tent still set up above his head as we ran. The trail back to the car was made up of a bunch of twists and turns because of the dense tree thickets and big boulders. The four of us decided we could afford a quick break, as Herbert was quite slow and Frank was getting tired. "Whew," Colin said. "Yeah, tough run," I replied. We were all out of breath. Even though the break was nice and all, we knew that we had to get going again when we saw the faint light from Herbert's flashlight in the process of waving around the boulders, along with the faint that followed. We picked up our pace. We made it back to the car in quite a short amount of time, as we had only set up camp about a half mile from the parking lot. We ran down the hill and hopped inside the car.
Come on, man, start the fucking car, start it up!
Cried Steve. I panicked in the heat of the moment, and I accidentally dropped the car keys on the car floor, which delayed us by a few seconds.
Drive, man, drive!
Steve exclaimed. I did just that. I backed out of the parking space, just in time for Herbert Ernie to jump onto the windshield. He pounded on the glass frantically. He screamed. I began driving, all while Herbert was still on the windshield. Luckily, all it took was one swipe of the windshield wipers to send Herbert flying off the car and into the bushes. I sped off and eventually got onto the main road. Once we got on the highway, we began to calm down a bit to analyze our situation. We had lost much of our gear trying to escape from Herbert. Luckily, Colin barely managed to save his tent. I lost my knife and my stove, unfortunately. Steve and Frank lost nothing as, well, they barely brought anything to begin with. After driving for about 25 more minutes, we reasoned up a plan. We would drive to Frostburg to meet Chad at the Hampton Inn. There, we'd stay the night and unwind from what had just happened, since we all agreed that we weren't ready to go home quite yet. Little did we know, though, that going to that hotel instead of home would end in absolute disaster. Around 10 p.m., when we arrived at the hotel, we knew that Chad had booked his own room and was already asleep, so we got our own room. We got a room that happened to be on the very first floor in the back of the hotel. Not ideal, but, it was better than being out in the woods with Herbert, so we couldn't complain. We were all exhausted from the day's events, so we all went to sleep immediately, except for Steve and Frank, who stayed up playing on Frank's Xbox. I, on the other hand, fell asleep instantly. I remember being woken up around 2 a.m. or something like that. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was that woke me up, but I suspected that it was the car headlights shining directly through our window that did. In my groggy daze, I got up to shut the curtains. As I looked outside, however, I noticed a chubby figure in a tree costume stepping out of a blue minivan that had its high beams shining directly into our room. The figure entered the hotel through some random back entrance, which I presumed to be the employee-only area to the kitchen. I was groggy, so I thought nothing of it and went back to sleep. I woke up to my alarm set for 7 a.m. Colin, Steve, and I spent an extra half an hour waiting for Frank to wake up. We texted Chad to let him know that we were in the hotel and to meet us in the lobby for breakfast, but he responded saying he usually likes to sleep in a little more.
"Fuck that dude,"
said Steve.
"I'm trying to be the first in line when the breakfast buffet opens up."
I had to agree with Steve on this one. None of us had eaten anything since the donut stand from the day previous, so we were all starving. The free hotel breakfast opened at 8, so we were sure to be there at 7:55 to be the first people in. The hotel worker came to unlock the dining room, and we were in. A few other early risers joined us as well. Man, am I looking forward to that waffle machine, said Colin. Same, I replied.
Well, all you goofy motherfuckers eat your buzz-style waffles? I'm finna my gains on with some skin sausage,
Exclaimed Steve.
You want muffins?
Frank squealed. We all picked a table to sit at and parted ways to get our food. I decided just to get my waffles later, as for now I went to get some roasted potatoes instead. However, when I went to lift the metal tray to the potatoes, I was instead met with something much more horrifying. Inside the platter of potatoes was nothing but mush, not just any mush. Mush that consisted of toenail clippings, mushy donut, earwax, belly button lint, and more. That's when I soon found out that this mush, quote unquote, wasn't just in the potatoes, but rather inside of every single food tray. Someone must have broken into the hotel last night and replaced the food with the mush. Who would do such a thing? I thought to myself. That's when I remembered last night, and seeing the mysterious figure breaking in through the back kitchen door.
Hello, boys.
A voice said.
Birdie?
It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. He now wore a full and complete chef outfit and was leaned against the door frame of the kitchen in a suave-like pose as if he was Bobby Flay or something. Herbert, I thought we got away from you, I exclaimed.
Well, I understand we had a bit of a rough night last night,
Herbert responded.
and I acted a little out of my mood. So, how about we settle our differences over some traditional style curly porridge?
Herbert took action. He grabbed a serving spoon off the counter and began catapulting lumps of curry porridge at us. Luckily, we were all able to barely dodge them. He did hit some innocent bystanders, though.
Get hit with curly porridge.
Herbert exclaimed. 5 minutes later, the cops arrived, and Herbert was taken away. We all gathered our things from our room and left the hotel early. We had to stop at a gas station for breakfast as the hotel kitchen and dining room was now closed for a while from what Herbert had done. None of us talked much on the way home, as we're all quite traumatized from what had happened. It then concludes the Dolly Sods disaster.